Good morning. I call this hearing to order, and I want to welcome back Small Business Administrator Maria Contreras-Sweet. I think everyone here wants the same thing, and that's to serve America's small businesses the best we can. Those of us up here on the dais have, I think, an advantage. Our constituents let us know how we're doing all the time and on an ongoing basis. As head of an agency, I sometimes worry that too often you mostly hear from your own folks and from other Washington bureaucrats. That's the only explanation for why the 69 GAO identified concerns and problems haven't been addressed. Yesterday wasn't the first time that these issues have been raised. Yesterday, we heard some pretty serious concerns, both by members of this committee and from our GAO witness who testified here yesterday about the management of the SBA. Administrator Contreras-Sweet, since you weren't with us yesterday, I'll recap those briefly with you, although I'm sure your staff has probably already given you a rundown. I told the GAO witness yesterday that this kind of reminds me of being a parent. If your teenager's room is a mess and they have stuff thrown all over the place, let's say there's 70 items thrown on the floor, 69 to be exact, and they only pick up 7 of those items, you don't look at the 62 remaining on the floor and raise their allowance for having made some progress. The ongoing problems at the SBA, as GAO identified, span the entire breadth of the agency, from information technology and security to staff management issues, from disaster response to fraud in your lending and contracting programs. It's a safe bet that small businesses in our districts on both sides of the aisle are paying the price for your agency's failures. What we have here is a failure of confidence in the SBA, and unfortunately for good reason. Before this hearing is over, I hope to hear a commitment from you to resolve as many of these problems as possible by June 30th, and I mean this year. I do appreciate how accessible you have always been to members of this committee, and I request that your office start providing monthly updates to our staff documenting your progress. If I were you, I'd start with these IT and cybersecurity deficiencies. That's what worries me the most, and I'll tell you why. We've seen the IRS hit, the State Department, OPM, and even the White House hacked. Small businesses trust the SBA, your agency, with their information, oftentimes very sensitive information that they don't want a rival business or their neighbors or the Chinese government to have access to. Yesterday, GAO told us this information is not adequately secured, and that cannot continue. I want to make this simple. We are not asking you to defend the SBA. We are asking you to do your best to fix it. And I would now yield to the ranking member for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this important hearing. As the only agency in the federal government charged specifically with helping small businesses grow and succeed, the Small Business Administration is critical to our nation's overall economic health. All of its functions serve to strengthen and preserve the entrepreneurial foundation of our economy. For small businesses to fully reap the benefit from SBA's program, it is important for the agency to operate efficiently and effectively, investing taxpayers' dollars wisely. As such, one of the most important roles of this committee is conducting vigorous oversight of the SBA and its activities, so we know the agency is serving small businesses well while spending taxpayers' dollars wisely. Yesterday, the committee heard from the Government Accountability Office as it described a management report requested by myself and former Chairman Graves. GAO testified about a wide range of, frankly, very troubling management challenges, many of which have persisted for years. I do fully recognize that many of these problems took root before Administrator Contreras-Sweet's tenure, and that furthermore, she has demonstrated a commitment to addressing them. With that said, there is still much work that needs to be accomplished in terms of addressing GAO recommendations. With only 15 out of the 63 recommendations closed, there needs to be more attention, not just to check the box, but to truly improve the agency. With that said, I understand that the frequent changes in political leadership create real difficulties for management. That is not an excuse, but rather a reality of the environment SBA functions in. So here you are, Ms. Contreras, in the hot seat. You are the administrator, and you will be asked to respond for 64 recommendations that has been made not only under your leadership, but for previous administration. And I feel optimistic of your commitment to tackle those issues, and we are here to discuss with you how do you intend to execute those recommendations by GAO. First and foremost, the agency's complex organizational structure may be impeding its ability to perform its mission effectively. Yesterday, it was raised time and time again that SBA's operations are siloed, resulting in inefficiencies and duplication. There also continues to be significant information technology problems as well. The agency has yet to implement more than 30 recommendations made by the Office of Inspector General related to IT security. This raises concerns about whether SBA data and systems are potentially vulnerable to breaches. The SBA's standard operating procedures are also in need of updating. By the agency's own admission, 74 of these provisions require revision and 31 should be canceled, while another 9 still need to be issued. Yet, we have not heard a meaningful time frame as to when all of this will be accomplished. It is my hope that today the administrator can clarify where the agency stands on these procedural notices. These are just some of the long-standing issues raised in GAO's analysis. Where there is always room for improvement, I was heartened to hear that SBA has accepted most of the GAO's recommendations, and I look forward to learning how the administrator is instituting change. I recognize that as a political appointee, she is in the difficult position of often having to answer for the work of her predecessors, as well as the career officials that often drive many key agency decisions. With that, I would like to thank the administrator for being here. I know your schedule is busy, so as always, we appreciate your participation. I thank the chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Gentlelady yields back. And if committee members have opening statements, I'd ask that they be submitted for the record. And a brief explanation of our time rules around here, which I know you're already familiar with. We basically operate under the 5-minute rule. You'll be given 5 minutes to testify. If you need a little more than that, we'll give you a little leeway since we only have one witness, as we did yesterday, although he kept it within, I think, about 3 minutes. But we're not asking that you do that. We will restrain ourselves by the same rules, 5 minutes, and we'll go back and forth between Republicans and Democrats, of course. And we all know who you are, and so I'm not going to give a long explanation of who the administrator is, but she's the 24th administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration, Maria Contreras-Sweet, and we welcome you here this morning, and you're recognized for 5 minutes or perhaps for a little bit longer if you need it. Thank you.
Let me just thank you and Ranking Member Velasquez and all of the members of the committee for engaging in the work and giving me this opportunity to testify before you today. It's nice to see you. I'd like to open just quickly with the review of fiscal year 2015. It was one of the most successful years in our agency's history. SBA reached historic levels for small business lending under our flagship 7A loan guarantee program, extending a whopping $23.5 billion in gross approvals. This represents a 22% increase in the number of loan approvals to prior last year, a 23% increase in their dollar value compared to 2014. These gains matter because FDIC data shows that Conventional small business lending has only returned to 84% of pre-recessionary levels. Filling those gaps in the marketplace is the very purpose for which SBA was created. We made notable progress increasing 7A loans to businesses with the greatest difficulty accessing capital, which is an important emphasis. The dollar value of our loans was up year on year, 22% to women, 23% to minorities, and 103% to veterans. Our number of loan approvals was up by 29%. Again, I just said that. These successes would not have been possible if not for the swift work of your committee. Due to our record-breaking year, SBA ran up against our statutory lending cap this August, 60 days before the end of our fiscal year. At the urging of our stakeholders, our mutual stakeholders, in less than a week, I want to repeat that, in less than a week, you passed a $4.5 billion increase in our 7A lending authority and ushered its passage onto the House floor. Your leadership allowed entrepreneurs across the country to continue to access the requisite capital they need to start, repair, and grow their businesses. SBA also shattered our record for small business investment under our SBIC program. We grew our portfolio by 10% to a record $25 billion. In FY16, the 7A, the 504, and the SBIC program share an important common thread, and I know you'll appreciate this. All these programs are expected to operate at zero subsidy this fiscal year. Thanks to this committee for working across the aisle to include in the omnibus bill the permanent reinstatement of 504 refinancing authority and an increase in SBIC's family of funds limit. Both of these policy changes will inject much needed capital into our small business ecosystem. Another priority for the SBA is federal contracting. The U.S. government awarded an all-time high of 24.99%, well over our mandated congressional mandate of 23% of government contracts to small businesses, supporting about 550,000 American jobs. We reached historic procurement levels for small disadvantaged businesses and firms owned by women and veterans. To summarize, SBA achieved a record year in small business lending, a record year in investment, and a record year in contracting, with no taxpayer subsidy needed to maintain this momentum. This is the context in which our hearing takes place today. Let me take this opportunity to acknowledge the Government Accountability Office for helping to confirm the areas of shared concern and for offering constructive suggestions to address them. From my first days in office, I have prioritized the need to modernize SBA operations enterprise-wide to respond to the technological, the demographic, and the globalization changes that are transforming our small business economy. To that end, I agree with many of the recommendations and appreciate the opportunity to address them to fully bring, Mr. Chairman, the SBA into the 21st century. My corporate, my government, and my community banking experiences will be brought to bear to make sure that you feel comfortable and the American people feel confidence in our systems, whether it be the Enterprise Risk Management Board that I've established and all the other systems I've put in place. We've implemented a number of mitigation measures that I'll get into later. But my background, starting 3 businesses, also impressed upon me the importance of optimizing ROI, return on investment, when putting precious taxpayer dollars to use. We have to take every measure to use those dollars wisely based on the best available data. In July of 2014, I established an impact evaluation working group charged with initiating and refining program evaluations for our entrepreneurial development programs. I've held numerous meetings with key resource partners, our SBDCs, SCORE, VETS, and so on, stressing the importance of collecting meaningful metrics. We're currently performing in-depth program evaluations across the agency. This includes the most comprehensive assessment of the SBIC program in our history. In collaboration with, yes, I wanted to make sure you had confidence, so we went to the Library of Congress to do this work. Our report is due out this spring. We've also made significant strides in addressing the information technology challenges included in the GA report. In fact, we're well underway of a major upgrade of our IT systems. It starts with the comprehensive network infrastructure modernization to give our systems greater capacity, transparency, and reliability. We're in the final stages now of moving our entire email system into the cloud for more security and reliability and capacity. We're investing in mobile technology, recognizing that our SBA field staff must go beyond the walls of the federal offices and go to consumers and to small businesses where they are. We also launched projects to modernize our lending and contracting systems to re-engineer our disaster credit management system, something I care deeply about. This entire modernization agenda complements our work to update our lending partner platforms, the outward-facing part of SBA, by bringing advances such as automation, digital signatures, yes, I said e-signatures, and online matchmaking to the entrepreneurs that we serve. These are time-saving and cost-saving technology enhancements that have encouraged community bankers to come back to SBA in many instances or to expand their lending. We've taken important steps on our human capital management efforts. I'm proud to work alongside the thousands of hardworking, dedicated public servants at SBA and our resource partners. I'm committed to ensuring that the agency has the talent required to effectively service America's entrepreneurs. We're currently crafting a comprehensive work plan which will include both a skills gap assessment and a gap closure plan. We've taken steps to address the SBA's aging workforce, not just unique to SBA, but across the federal government, a challenge. As the launch of the Vera Visa program, I understood that we wanted to offer employees an opportunity to make decisions, to create openings so that we could begin to fill those competency gaps. SBA is organizing our Presidential Management Fellows program to increase our impact. We're working with our veterans. We're attracting more Peace Corps to our programs. And I know you're going to love this. We installed the first ever Chief Learning Officer at SBA. I have been on the job for 20 months, and I'm proud of the progress at this time. But the truth is that I could not have done this without your commitment, and I'm grateful for your support. As a result of your leadership and the daily efforts of our dedicated staff, I inherited an agency highly leveraged, operating effectively, and focused on advancing and fulfilling our statutory mission. Again, the proof of the pudding is in the tasting, in the eating, and I think the record of our historic achievements speak to that. There's always room to improve, and that's what we're here to talk about today. And so, yes, I am committed to working with you to improve the services and give small businesses the agency that they deserve and that taxpayers expect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'll yield to myself 5 minutes to begin the questioning. Madam Administrator, as I mentioned in my opening statement, the GAO witness yesterday testified that SBA's IT security, leaves the sensitive information of small businesses and their owners vulnerable to hackers, to theft, to fraud. Yet the SBA has failed to implement more than 30 of the Office of the Inspector General's recommendations related to IT security, leaving small businesses and individuals exposed. What's being done to address these problems, and when will it be completed?
I think that's a fair question, Chairman. I honestly do. I think technology drives increasingly more and more of our lives, you know, from our microwave to our smartphones, and so it has to be an essential part of our strategy at SBA. Just as an example, to show you the progress that I've made since I arrived, and I was here, you know, the last time I was here, you asked me about the LMAS system, the Loan Management Accounting System. That is the main body with which we interact with our lending partners, of an important function and purpose. And it had been there for a while, working this way through, and I committed to you that I would get that done, and we did. That is to say that we are now off the mainframe and that we have an interoperable, a compatible system with today's technology where we can now plug and play systems is a wonderful achievement that even many Fortune companies don't achieve, and many in government. I'm proud that SBA has already achieved that.
Well, let me ask you this then, and my time's limited, as I'm sure you know. I'd like your commitment to resolving the outstanding GAO recommendations by June 30th and to having our staff briefed on that progress on a monthly basis. Do I have that commitment?
I commit to you to reporting to you on a regular basis and will work with God's speed to make your deadline.
All right, well, we're shooting for the 30th. There's 30 things, so let's get it done.
Mr. Chairman, I was able to touch the Pope while he was here, and I'm hoping that it
right.
imbues me with the ability to fulfill
Well, you got
your
closer than
date.
I did then. Let me move on to another question. When the GAO interviewed your district personnel so that they could do their review, your folks insisted on having a lawyer present. Now, when this came up yesterday, when the GAO was here, Trent Kelly, a member of this committee who happens to be a former prosecutor and district attorney himself, made, I think, an important observation. He said that in his experience that when people lawyer up, as your folks did, it often means that they have something to hide. Who made the decision to have a lawyer present, the need to do that when the GAO, an arm of Congress, was just performing its duty at the request of this body and at the request of the former chairman and the ranking member? So this was a bipartisan request.
Yeah. You know, again, I think that's a fair comment. I did not know that that was happening. I wasn't briefed, and I don't know. Honestly, that's one thing that I want to say. The second thing that I want to tell you is if you've ever met our district staff, I got to tell you, nothing intimidates these people. I mean, I go out and I meet with them, and they can, you know, we have lawyers in the room, and they still tell me all the problems and challenges and the wonderful things they're doing.
With all due respect, shouldn't you know who in your agency gave an order like this that interfered with the GAO's effort to conduct an investigation? That, again, the GAO is a branch. This is, you know, we all get a paycheck. You know, the taxpayers pay for it.
Sure.
We shouldn't have to lawyer up if we're talking.
Mr. Chairman, you know, if I may just respond, what I really wanted to say is I have no idea if it was the reverse, the reciprocal, and I will look into it and I will get back to you. It could have been that some of the employees felt intimidated by an investigation and maybe wanted somebody in their presence. But I understand what I did get briefed on is that the IG, Mr. Scheer in particular, said that he had independent ability to follow up through emails and was able to get the information. And clearly by this report, you can see that nothing was being hidden.
All right, well, it shouldn't take till June 30th for us to find out who made that decision, so please get back to us soon.
Fair enough.
And I have limited time, so I only have time for one more question.
Please.
The GAO review of the SBA stated, and I quote, "In the September 2015 report, we found that the SBA has not resolved many of its long-standing management challenges due to lack of sustained priority attention over time." GAO went on to say, "This raises questions about the SBA's sustained commitment to addressing management challenges." In other words, dealing with the SBA shortcomings and deficiencies, and in many cases failures, apparently just isn't a priority to some of your folks. Well, it's a priority to this committee. Why should we not question the SBA's sustained commitment to improving itself? And you've indicated that you're willing to do that. I appreciate that. We're willing to work with you so it can serve the needs of America's small businesses all across this country.
Right. Well, let me just say that I with great lament, when I read the report that these issues had begun in the 90s and some even as far back to the 80s. So I appreciate that I've been here for about 20 months. I think that you'll see that the progress that we made is quite remarkable. But as I mentioned to you, I'm committed to keeping this momentum going and with the good Lord, making the progress that your expectations meet. But I'm absolutely committed to making sure that people understand that this SBA is effective. And as I said, the numbers prove it out. Sometimes it's not pretty, and it should be a little prettier in terms of our documentation and our processes. But when you think of in technology that we started a program called Link in this amount of time, that we're able to start a program like Match.com. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Match.com, but you don't have to tell me if you are. But the point is, seriously, that...
Just for the record, I know nothing about it.
But I just want you to know that with that system, we are now able to get dates for prospective borrowers, but this data is with the lender. 22,000 people have already been connected in just a few short months. That's a remarkable technological accomplishment. SBA 1, where we are now introducing a new platform with our lenders. So I understand that there are challenges in documentation. I commit to you to working better on that, but I want you to know the work is getting done.
Okay, thank you. My time's expired. And again, just to reiterate, our number one priority is what's in the best interest of America's small businesses, and that's what this hearing's about. 70% of the new jobs created across America are small businesses doing that, so we need to do our best for them. And I'll now recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just would like to enter into the record as a matter of clarification the fact that in SOP 40002, it is a requirement for a legal counsel to be present when district staff is being interviewed. And so here it is, it's part of the SOP. I would like to ask the administrator, I would like to recommend to you that you start with 40002 to remove barriers to GAO access. So you could start with this SOP, updating it so that it reflects that there's no intention to prevent staff from speaking to GAO or GAO to have access to documents of the Small Business Administration. With that said, in the report, Administrator Contreras, GAO found that SBA still has not implemented disaster program efforts, reforms, which this committee authored when I was chair in 2008. I asked the same question to GAO yesterday, but I would like to hear your answer as well. What are the major reasons why SBA has not established the immediate disaster assistance program?
You and I talked about that offline, and I heard you loud and clear, and I did a little bit of homework on that. And so, number one, I learned that we actually had promulgated an interim rule, and we put it out, and so we put the reg out. And then when we were recruiting banks, financial institutions, quite frankly, you and I could hold a round table. What they said is that the IDAP, the Immediate Disaster Assistance Program.
Okay, because my time is limited.
Okay.
I know you're talking to lenders.
Yeah.
And so what is the timeline for doing so?
So I'm just saying that we already have an interim rule for IDAP that we can use and deploy to start using it. What we're trying to do now is recruit banks. When you ask a bank to amortize a $25,000 loan, a $10,000 loan over 10 years, it's something that's not attractive to them, especially because it has a low interest cap. So somehow we have to make it more attractive. But in the spirit of what you want, I wanted to assure you that the Office of Disaster does provide loans, and we already did a non-collateralized $25,000 loan and is now being processed in 7 days.
As you know, we have been dealing with the issue of Sandy in New York, and so many people, businesses, who qualify for those loans didn't get it. And so we passed legislation now to reopen and for people to be able, businesses, to reapply. But if you see some issues where you feel that there has to be some legislative fixes, we need to hear about it. So let's have that discussion and get this program up and running, because we cannot wait until the next natural disaster strike and come back here to be on the same position asking the same question.
Right. When I looked into that, I agreed with you, and I didn't want to rely on hearsay, and that's why now I've put out a formal ANPRM, a Notice of Public Rulemaking, and that's out and available, and as soon as we get that formal comment, we'll respond back to you on what those remedies might be. But in the interim, I'm also pushing forward on the EDAP and the PDAP to make sure that all the complement that you intended are executed in the way that you imagined. And I just wanted to add, if I may, that disaster assistance, as you know, has been something that's very, very important to both of us. And that's why the day that I was sworn in, I committed to flying to the state of Washington to look at OSO, Darrington, Arlington. I went to the state of North Carolina to meet with Nikki Haley when she was experiencing hers. And I'm committed to going to Missouri. And our team is already there. We have 12 employees in Missouri already examining the disaster to determine the appropriate response. And the record shows that now, once we are given permission and declare a disaster, we're there in 24 hours, Madam Ranking
Thank you.
Member.
Thank you. So I just want to congratulate you on the many successes, including the 7A lending dollars, contracting goals, exceeded those contracting goals. SBIC is up to 10%, but we could do better. And that is the reason why we are here today. We need to update those SOPs because if the agency cannot hold its resources partners accountable and there is confusion as to how the programs are supposed to operate, that will impede the success and for businesses to be able to get the assistance that they need. So what you have done so far and what are you planning to do to further address the SOP problem? I do not want to impose upon you that you provide a report every month, but I want a commitment that tell us that you are really, you're going to do everything you can because you know, the next administration will be in place pretty soon, a year and a half from now, and we need to see what type of energy and resources you're going to put into place. And if there is a lack of adequate resources for your agency to do the work, we need to know so that in the next budget submission is included that you need more funding.
Thank you for that.
The general lady's time's expired. You can answer the question, but I do want to make sure that on behalf of the committee, we do want a monthly update on what progress is being made towards the deficiencies that the GAO has set out in their review.
I heard you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you. With great brevity, then let me just say for those of you who have not seen an SOP, this is a review, a complete review and overhaul of a department's way of operating. Some of these are, you know, inches tall. This is an important body of work, and I want you to know that we've completed more SOPs in the 20 months that I've been than the prior 5 years combined. And so that is just to show you the momentum with which I've taken this so seriously, because I'm working hard, you know, to make up time, lost time, but I also want to have it institutionalized so that when somebody comes in, that this is work that has been harnessed and seized. So to that point, we already have over 30 more SOPs that we're interacting with and that are pending in interaction that we think will show great progress very soon. So just know I take those SOPs seriously, again, for the institutionalization of our legacy.
The general lady's time has expired. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Gibson, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate this hearing. You know, with due respect, I'll say right up front, I'm a little disappointed so far in the approach of the hearing in terms of the responses. You know, the chairman set a tone, I think, at the outset that we really want to work together going forward, identifying all the deficiencies and the shortcomings. But, you know, the opening set of remarks, I certainly appreciate how you've pointed out what you did with the resources to support small businesses. I want to state that very clearly and sincerely, but really the focus here is on, you know, improving what are very disturbing findings from the GAO. And so, you know, towards that end, my colleague from New York, Mr. Hanna, leads a subcommittee, and, you know, they did, I think, very strong work on behalf of the American people with regard to procurement reforms. This was incorporated into the National Defense Authorization Act in 2013. But yet, you know, among the findings from the GAO is that there has been no action taken. I mean, the law was very clear that action was to be taken within 6 months of the implementation of that law. So my question to you is, you know, what explains why nothing has been done on this score? Do you disagree with us on what was done? And if you do, well, it'd been nice to know that before now, but if you agree with us, why has nothing been done?
First of all, let me just thank you for your service. I know that you're an admirable veteran, and I really salute the work that you've done in particularly difficult zones in our world. But let me just speak to, if I haven't shown or exhibited the level of seriousness with which I take this work, I apologize. But let me just say, when I looked that up, just to see the momentum, because I thought that, that I should stress this to you, under prior administrations, like in 2002, for example, there had been one debarment. In 2003, one. In 2004, zero. Under my term, I've already completed 47 of these, just to show you the momentum with which I'm approaching this work. So please do not, don't underestimate the commitment with which I make this commitment to you. I came from the state of California. In California, I had 42,000 employees to work with in one state. Do you know here, to the ranking member's question, I have fewer than 2,000 employees. You know, so in procurement, we have to partner, and we work very closely with our strategic partners. If you just took the Air Force alone, do you know that the Air Force has 22,000 captains? 2,200 captains, just captains alone. Again, I have fewer than 2,000 employees across the agency, and yet we're managing a portfolio of $120 billion, the most complex system of networks. We are we're redirecting 23% of the largest procure in the world to small businesses successfully. And yes, we are pushing to debar because I don't want any fraud, waste, and abuse. I can tell you that when I started my own personal business, I couldn't get certified as a woman business. I couldn't confirm that I was a woman-owned business. So to me, to make sure that we're doing those certifications is important, but also more important, to make sure that people aren't getting in who don't deserve to be in the program and are abusing the program and taking advantage of it and taking contracts from people who deserve them. So our people are there fighting up against Department of Energy top officials, up against Department of Defense officials. Our small business advocates, our PCRs, are in those places where people don't like them to be, because we are sharp elbowing them to make sure that every appropriate small business opportunity goes to a small business.
So thank you, and appreciate the passion that you're bringing, the leadership to the organization. One just quick follow-up on that then. So as the chairman mentioned, we're going to be anticipating reports, monthly reports. I would hope that in the first one, we'll see an official response to the implementation of this FY13 National Defense Authorization Act as it relates to the requirements we levied upon the SBA. And I have very little time remaining. Let me just say that from my experiences leading formations, one of the things that concerns me is the level of turnover in the SBA. And so we're not going to have time for you to respond, but also for the record, I'd like to know, from your vantage point as the leader, what are you doing to ensure continuity in terms of transition periods when you, so really 2 points. One is, are you taking any executive action to lessen the turnover? And then two, given those realities, what SOPs do you have in place to ensure that when new folks come on board that there's a good and effective transition? Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry I'm over, and I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired, but if you could give a brief answer, and again, we're going to be receiving reports so you can go in more depth with the follow-up, but if you could make a brief response.
Let me just say that to me, one of the most important things is to show people what their job is, to give them clarity of purpose and to reward them appropriately, and to provide an environment where they're well-resourced, their scope of work is clearly defined, and they're well-resourced, as I said. And so to that end, I've put in the first ever SBA Chief Learning Officer. I've upskilled the CHICO function in our office, where now I have somebody who actually has the theoretical and the practical experience. I'm holding town halls. I'm visiting every district office to learn of these, what the challenges are across the country. But let me just say, across the government, we have an aging workforce challenge that we have to address. And so I've gone with my chief of staff to try to recruit more people. We're holding job fairs across the country. Just in the short time that I've been there, I've hosted 10 job fairs. I've reached out to the Peace Corps and our veterans to try to attract more skills and competencies of discipline, of entrepreneurship, and perseverance. And I think it's beginning to pay off, sir.
Thank you. The gentleman's time's expired. The gentlelady from California, Ms. Hahn, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member. This is a very interesting hearing, and I really want to thank Administrator Maria Contreras-Sweet for being here and just sitting here, just listening to you and your answers in your first couple of questions has really restored you know, my passion for small businesses and what this agency is doing. And I had an opportunity to work with her when she was the Secretary of California Business, Transportation, and Housing Agency. And as the administrator, what I've really appreciated is your district staff, Victor Parker, and you both have come to my district, and we've held roundtables, and we've toured small businesses together. And the chairman's opening comment about sometimes all we hear is from our own constituents about some of their problems. I think you've actually heard the problems yourself because you've been on the ground, you've been in our small businesses. And, you know, while certainly this hearing is about the recommendations that we're trying to get responded to and reformed and in the administration, it's clear that your record year of lending to small businesses, investing, contracting is really what I care about. And I know maybe the priorities on this committee are maybe a little bit different, but that's my priority because that is what I always heard was you know, access to capital and federal contracting. And you're certainly addressing those previous weaknesses in the agency. And it's clear that you know, the SBA has been around since 1953, and many of these issues that were pointed out in the GAO report have existed long before you and long before this administration. But I will, and whether or not you can address every single one of them by June, I don't know, but I have no doubt that you're going to try, and that's important to you. But one of the issues that in the report that was important to me, and I understand it's also a priority for you, is the Women-Owned Small Business Program. And this is, of course, a program that allows women-owned small businesses to compete for federal contracts. And unfortunately, one of the things we found out was that there were problems verifying the eligibility of the applicants, resulting in contracts being awarded to men. Yikes. But I know you're working on this. Can you tell us where you are in the process of making sure that those contracts indeed are being awarded to the women-owned businesses?
Thank you. As you know, when I arrived, you mandated that we achieve a 5% goal with women-owned small businesses. And to my great lament, we had not reached a 5% goal for contracting with women. Women are 50% of the population. So I think it's, you know, it should be something that should be achievable. And so we came to you again, and I was delighted that Congress now has given us a brand new tool, sole source authority, where we have now the ability to begin to certify businesses so that we can take out any fraud, waste, and abuse. And so we're now, I just published the ANPRM to get the proper feedback, to make sure that we're following the right procedures and processes and not just implementing something nilly-willy. And so I'm pleased to tell you that already we've got that out, and we're already beginning to get comments, and we're going to formalize them and create a process for certification that will assure that people understand what is a women-owned small business, that the standard is set, and that we have people properly trained to be able to certify them.
Thank you. I appreciate that because certainly in LA County, you know, we have more women-owned businesses than any other county in the country. So we're very proud of that, and we know that for me, that's a priority in this committee, is that clearly we are supporting the women-owned and minority-owned businesses in my county for sure. So I appreciate your work on that one concern and recommendation.
Well, you've been a stalwart on behalf of women, not only for the County of Los Angeles, but for our country. Thank you for your leadership.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Brad, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back my time.
The gentlelady from American Samoa, who is the chairman of the Subcommittee on Health and Technology, Ms. Radewagen, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the ranking member. Madam Administrator, considering the recent new offices built that may or may not provide redundant roles as other offices in close proximity, Was there any thought given to the U.S. territories? Can you explain your rationale?
I'm sorry, the rationale for what? Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Let me give you the question again. The U.S. territories.
Yes.
The question was, considering the recent new offices built that may or may not provide redundant roles as other offices in close proximity, was there any thought given to the U.S. territories?
I heard the question. I was trying to understand. Are you saying that we're building offices? I was just trying to clarify.
I think so.
Because I'm not aware that we're building an office there. I'm trying to understand the context of the question. But let me just say that I'd be delighted to sit down with you to understand if you are not getting the service levels that you deserve and that you expect to come back to you with the plan to
Thank
do
you,
so.
Madam Administrator. Next, what functions are performed by the personnel in the agency's regional offices?
What are the personnel functions?
Yes, what are the functions performed by the personnel
Oh, I see. Okay.
in the regional offices?
Thank you, thank you. What we have at headquarters is policy offices, and so you'll have, for example, the GCBD, the Office of General Contracting and Business Development. You'll have an Office of Capital Access. So we have the various offices that operate the various programs and staff and line functions. In the district office is where the magic all comes together. So there in the district office, you will have a lending relations specialist, you'll have a BOS, a business opportunity specialist, working alongside an EDS and educational development service specialist. And all these people work together to create a sense of community, to provide the full complement of services that our resource partners need and entrepreneurs need and our lending partners and local governments. I'll give you an example. We have a challenge today where while we can be a program provider, we also want to be a voice for small business. And so one of the challenges that we found in local communities is that they're the ones that license small business formation and in many instances capital formation. And so we launched a program called Startup in a Day. And Startup in a Day is where we go into the city to make sure that they can put on online responses so that small businesses can start their business in a day without having to go through a labyrinth of regulation.
Thank you.
And so they execute on programs such as that.
Have you examined whether those functions could be performed by other personnel, either at headquarters or in the district offices, and thereby provide additional full-time equivalent personnel for functions such as an increase in the number of procurement center representatives?
I've honestly, having been an entrepreneur and a community banker, I have thought about that, and it was a tough call for me. You know, I could convene and have everybody centered and headquartered in Washington, D.C. and not connected to community, but I decided that it was more important to be embedded in the community and a part of the community and understand what those nuances are in each neighborhood, and I think that the numbers prove that that's working well.
Thank you. You do not have a chief information officer, a position I presume that you consider critical to the operation of the agency. Where are you in the process of finding a permanent chief information officer? I appreciate that you've got a chief learning officer.
Yeah, the chief learning officer is more of a learning, more of a human resource function, I should say. But what I did is I went to Silicon Valley, I went out to California, I've gone to the East Coast to try to find a really thoughtful, successful person who knows how to procure and to execute. While I think that I have some talents, I must say that I'm not an expert in technology. And I really wanted to make sure that I had the top level of advice to make sure that I was filling the position appropriately. So I have a strong person who's been a dedicated employee of SBA as the acting, and I've now put in what I call a chief design officer, digital officer, excuse me, that is working with us to fully complement that team and fill it in. And we're getting candidates, we're going to the right places to find the right people. But it's tough government-wide to attract top technology talent because the salary structure and compensation in government compared to the private sector. But I'm determined, and I think we're going to be successful to do it.
I think you do need a chief information officer.
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Agreed.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, and I would just note that the gentlelady is absolutely correct. In fact, by statute, it's required to have
That's
a
right.
CIO, so we'd urge you to get that done,
Yeah.
please. All right, we'll now move to the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Meng, who is the ranking member of the Agriculture, Energy, and Trade Subcommittee. All right, sorry about that. I was given the wrong card here. Ms. Lawrence? Ms. Lawrence, it was by, did you get here when we had started, though?
Yes, I've been,
All
I
right,
was the first
then-
one here.
Okay, I've been,
It's
go
fine.
right ahead. Go 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the chair and our ranking member. I want to say, Madam Administrator, your response to the questions have been, I sit on oversight, so I'm used to speaking to our department heads and leaders in our government. And it's refreshing to have an administrator who, first of all, shows commitment, enthusiasm about your responsibility, but you've been able to answer with a proactive response to these questions and concerns. So I want you to know that that's refreshing, and I appreciate it. In addition to that, it is important that we do have reviews of departments. And the fact that the GAO has identified areas that we can improve, we as a government need to look at those areas, but our commitment and our focus should be on how do we move forward. And so with that, I want to say I'm very encouraged by your leadership. I wanted to follow up again on something I'm very passionate about. I'll share with my colleague, Congresswoman Hunn, and that's about the women and minority-owned businesses. And for the record, the women-owned businesses grew by more than 25%, and minority-owned grew by 38% between 2007 and 2012. So if you want to say, how did we grow our economy, it was on the women-owned and minority-owned businesses in America. So we should be very committed and focus on that area. The majority of the women-owned businesses have been, that have opened, has been in healthcare and social assistance sector. How is the SBA encouraging and promoting women and minorities to open businesses in technology, manufacturing, and the engineering industry?
That's a very, very important question because we have to make sure that we're moving forward in terms of the skill set that America's workforce really needs.
Yes.
And so I appreciate where you're going. Let me just give you two broad answers. One is that just to make sure that we're getting more people who traditionally have not been given access to capital, we've taken some very aggressive steps. We have zeroed out fees on loans under $150,000. That's an important thing, just so that the cost structure is better for the borrower. Second, I've recruited more and more outlets, credit unions. We had not really engaged credit unions to the extent that I think that they can be engaged. They're nonprofit, they're not paying taxes, and they willingly agreed to enter into a partnership with SBA in an unprecedented way. And so I'm pleased. But again, how do we get, instead of having people knock on a door for slow maybe of a bank and another bank and another bank, what I wanted to do is put up this program that I call Link. And it is where, again, a prospective borrower answers some simple questions, and then they are connected to financial institutions. And as I referenced earlier, over 22,000 people have already made matches. In fact, the last time I was in this room, there was a woman who was sitting in this audience who said that as a result of Link, she was able to take a very usurious rate loan and make it more a more attractive loan, and as a result, increased her cash flow, her EBIT, and is now growing. And so it's a big. Those are the kinds of stories I get across the country. The second point about making certain that we're getting people in the tech, in the STEM fields, which you allude to, is we've launched a program that we call Innovator. And when I say program, it's an outreach initiative. But what we wanted to do is to say to women that who we don't see in Silicon Valley and doing the scale-ups at the same rate. And so we said Innovate Her is spelled H-E-R, the last three letters. Okay. And it's a national effort to reach out to women to say hack, disrupt, invent, change industries. You too can be in cybersecurity. You too can be in precision medicine. You too can be in aeroponics. We need to get women in the non-traditional fields, and so this effort of rolling this out is getting women engaged. We had last year 100 various competitions of women engaging and beginning to disrupt industries that they belong to. So I'm proud of that progress, but again, we will continue to do it, and we invite you to come in and participate this Women's History Month in March, where we will be convening the winners of those competitions.
Thank you so much. Before my time roll out, I also wanted to comment on, you have addressed extremely well how you're putting in places as standard operating plans and how you're addressing that. I
What-
want to make sure that
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to make sure that we are supporting you, giving you the tools that you need. You complimented us a couple of times for the action that we take. So it's not so much just getting a report from you, but also when you identify that there are areas that the government could support the Small Business Administration, that we're getting those on a regular basis too. Thank you.
Thank
The
you.
general time's expired, but you can answer the question.
Just as I stated earlier, we've closed 14 SOPs after not having seen any being closed. More than 4 times, more than in prior 4 years combined, as I said. We have an additional 41 pending and working to collaboratively with the GAO. So the momentum is strong, and I do commit to you that we will double what we did last year. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentlelady's time's expired. The gentleman from California, Mr. Knight, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, darn.
Madam Administrator, I've got just a couple questions. One of them's on the line of the CIO, and I know that you've been there for 20 months. This is a critical position. I understand that someone is overseeing this position as an assistant. Would we believe that that person would have the same responsibilities as a CIO would? Would they respond to your expectations? Because as I understand it, it responds to the COO and not to you. So would that continue to be when the CIO is hired at some future date? Would they still continue to respond to the COO, or would they come to you?
That's a fair question. Let me just say that in the structure, the organizational structure as we have it, the operations, we have a deputy administrator who is sort of, if you will, I don't want to use the term, but you know, you could say the chief operating officer. And so the bowels of the organization, the functions that run and rev up the engine and our torque, all report into the deputy administrator. That is generally the way the SBA is operated. And so this person reports in through that function, and it's working. This person has been hugely successful. I just had him present at an entire town hall, and I want to tell you that few people in our agency, enjoy these when we put them on, but we think they're important ways to distribute information. He received one of the loudest applauses for the moves that he's making to put us on the cloud. To make that move. He's getting now laptops for our field operations people so that they can go to meet and participate in the growth accelerators.
But this would still come to you at some point.
Oh,
is
it
that
always
correct?
does.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so
And it's a very flat organization, and I make myself available. I participate in weekly senior staff meetings, so I'm seeing this person on
and
a
I
regular
understand
basis.
the day-to-day operations and how the process works. But at some point, there are going to be responsibilities and decisions that are going to have to be made that are going to have to be made by you or be on your doorstep. So I just want to make sure that's clear, especially when a CIO is hired. The 69 items, I know that people have made a lot of this, and you being in there for 20 months and these items coming up after that. 7 items being cleared up and 62 items still being on the docket. As a leader of an organization such as yourself or any one of us, there must be prioritization. And you must put out the fires first and then start working on the issues that you think are number 1 through number, in this case, 69. Would you say that any of these items are not on that list? And in other words, would you say that, hey, I've looked at these 69 items. Yes, there are some good items here. There are some things that we want to work on, some issues that we want to fix. But there are some of them, and just by one of your statements, that you say that some of these might not be needed. Could you explain parts of these or any of these issues of these 69 that might not be needed or that you might not work on?
I track these. I just want you to know that I track them, and I receive this report on a regular basis. And what I want to tell you is that as I dissected them, again, I noted that, and I think that you did too, that the GAO stated that these have, some stem from, the 80s and the 90s. And so we're working through them, as I mentioned, but I'm doing that. In other words, I think they're all important and they're all vital, but I'm prioritizing. So, for example, the disaster. There are two that were disaster-oriented, and we pushed those out as a priority. So I'm going through and sifting and making sure that I'm monitoring them.
Basically, what I want to get to is that we have a prioritization of basically 1 through 69. We're going to knock these items out. And lastly, we have an aging workforce in many industries, but there's probably no more difficult industry than the IT area in this country.
Yeah.
We are producing about 150,000 jobs a year in software and IT and coding and all of these types of positions, and it is very difficult to get them into government jobs, as I understand that the pay is not as good. What kind of policies? What are you pushing forward so that we can get these young 20 to 30-year-olds that know up-to-date IT, know up-to-date software, and you can push them into the SBA?
Well, thank you. I'd love to have, if you would, sir, give me the budget that GE has. I think those commercials are fantastic where they say, oh, you're going to go work for GE? Too bad you're not going to go work for a hip, happy place. And so, I feel their pain. Do you know what I'm saying? And so that's why I said that we're really trying to reach out to Peace Corps types, to veteran types. I'm going to more college fairs. We're traveling to the coast as well as the middle part of the state to if you will, brand SBA. And I hope that you felt our efforts, for example, during Small Business Saturday, which is, the weekend of Thanksgiving. And so I was out not just talking about supporting small businesses, but also as making SBA an attractive place to work. And to that end, we're working through millennial channels. I just retained a fabulous producer and very popular gentleman with youth, Mike Muse, who's now doing video spots for me and placing them out in different industries. I partner with anybody who is willing to help me amplify the opportunities at SBA. But more important to the point is that I write the correct job description so that we're not just hiring the same people again. And so that's what I've undertaken as a priority, is to make sure that the job descriptions speak to the future. And then when they come in, for example, the PMFs that I have right now, I'm giving them, since I have very limited HR training budgets, I give them rotational opportunities. I give them an opportunity to be mentored. And so we're just trying to shake it up so that they feel good
And I
about it.
appreciate that, and I know my time has expired, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, the gentleman's time's expired. Now the gentlelady from New York, and I apologize for the mix-up before.
That's okay. Thank you, Madam Administrator, for being here today, and also for all the work that you've been doing, traveling all throughout the country to various districts, including ours in New York, hearing directly from small businesses about their problems and concerns. I, too, echo the sentiments of my colleagues and especially Ms. Lawrence in appreciating your passion, enthusiasm, and great efforts while being an administrator. My question is, in response to the GAO's recommendation, the agency has said that it's currently restricted from collecting data for some resource partners, or that the agency doesn't have adequate information collection systems for some programs, which makes program evaluations difficult. Can you expand on this and explain how these restrictions and a lack of adequate collection systems are preventing the SBA from conducting evaluations? And what efforts can Congress undertake to help remove any data collection restrictions and help the SBA collect important data from the resource partners?
I think data collection is fundamental in evaluations, assessments, and strategic planning. You have to start with good data, rich data. And so I'm pleased that in each of my outreach efforts, whether it's our SCORE partners, our SBDCs, the SBICs, just stop me if I'm using too many acronyms, I apologize. But I don't like jargon, so I don't mean to do that. But our resource partners, let me just say that they are collecting rich data, but there's a natural screen in how much they give to us. So we've reached agreement on 10 measures that we can agree on about, encounters, capital formation, business starts, contracting, those kinds of things. So that data is collected and it's mined and it's utilized. And then we get qualitative data. So not just the quantitative, but we also work on qualitative interactions, meaning focus study groups and interactions and roundtables that I've hosted, for example, with you around the country, and with the chairman and the ranking member and others. But my disappointment, if you will, and a way in which you could help me, is that for me, a critical data point would be a unique identifier. I'm not trying to invade privacy. It can be, any numeric number. It can be part of an alphabet. But for me, when someone says that they've served 100 people in a day, and then, I don't know if that's somebody that came in twice in that one day or if that's 100 different people. And so I think a unique identifier would be very useful in being able to track longitudinally what our actual accomplishments are. So that's what I'm very seriously looking into. I've discussed this with our resource partners, and they're beginning to be, I feel, some are more amenable than others, but with your help, we can get there.
Thank you. And my last question is about human capital management. I know that Mr. Wright touched upon this a little bit. From yesterday's hearing, we talked about how the GAO report identified challenges at the agency, one of which was the need to prioritize transformation in the area of human capital. Do you agree, and what is being done about that?
Yes. I should have just mentioned to you that more to the point about your prior concern is that at the agency, what I've done is I've put together an interagency evaluation working group so that all the program heads are not just working with our resource partners, but also what measures matter to them so that they're also mining the correct data and we can build proper evaluations to be more responsive to the management challenges that we're addressing here today. So I wanted just to speak to that. With respect to human capital, as I mentioned, when we talk about the district offices, as the Congresswoman from the islands mentioned earlier, the Samoa Islands, our teams, I think people, because we have one of the best leverage factors around, again, understanding that we're only, fewer than 2,000 employees leveraging these kinds of numbers, managing the federal government procurement process, setting the NAICS codes for the world, and the kinds of things that we do leverage up. These district offices, in many instances, have 5 or 6 employees, and when you and I host a conference with 500 people who need their help, it's a lot of lifting. So in any instance that we could take a serious look at the structure, meaning size of SBA, I think it would go a long way.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Corbello, who's chairman of the Subcommittee on Agriculture, Energy, and Trade, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Administrator, for being here today. And thank you also for visiting South Florida last year. It was a pleasure to see you at Florida International University. I think one of the complaints that most of us hear most frequently about government is that it's dysfunctional, that government is incompetent, that government is unaccountable. And yesterday, in the GAO representative's testimony, one of the things that struck me the most was that the GAO perceives a breakdown in communication at the SBA, that employees don't have forums in which they can express their frustrations, perhaps their views on how things can be done differently. Do you perceive that there's a culture at the SBA where employees don't feel that freedom to express their views, to share their concerns, and to share perhaps their contributions with regards to how the SBA could be run more efficiently, more effectively, and more competently?
Yeah, I have to tell you that I think communications is foundational to running an effective organization. And so, and there are formal and informal processes, and sometimes people, communicate more by standing by the fountain, the water fountain, than anything else. And so we have to make sure that we're managing communications, because not communicating, the absence of communication, does challenge an organization. So just to share with you the systems that we have in place, first and foremost, we start with an annual strategic meeting, one time, where we bring the entire field operations together with the heads of program offices, and we have a full interaction for a 3-day setting to set priorities and then to talk about execution and accountability and time frame and so forth. That's number one. Number two, then, we follow up with the weekly engagement. I'm on the phone, or my chief of staff, or on a weekly basis. Every district director, and many instances the Triple D, the deputy district director, are on the phone engaging with us. On a daily basis, we have what we call the SBA Daily. And I know it's not a great name, but I have to tell you that people really are drawn to this because it tells them exactly what's going on at any given day with respect to anything that's happening in SBA. And I visit district offices, the program offices visit district offices, and then I hold round tables with every one of the teams, and I walk floors. I mean, for heaven's sakes, on Thanksgiving, I was passing out tangerines. On Halloween, I join them for festivities. So we have informal, formal, and then when we have special as-needed events like town halls, so we don't wait for those. If we need to have a special town hall, we engage in that too. But I've got to tell you again, these are people who are fighting and are, in the district, creating success every day, and I don't see them being shy about communicating.
So, Madam Administrator, sometimes communication only flows from the top down. You are comfortable that at the agency right now, there's an environment in which employees, from the rank and file to those in leadership positions, can express their views, their frustrations, their joys with their superiors, and really create that culture of information sharing that I think is essential for the competent functioning of any organization. You feel comfortable that that culture exists today. Do you think there could be improvements? Do you find any validity in the concerns expressed by the GAO with regards to communication within the SBA?
Well, if the GAO stated it, somebody must have said to him that there was a challenge, and so I have to take that seriously. There's no question about it. I have to take that seriously. Again, my reality is that that they step forward at town halls. It's an open town hall. I take people out to lunch and say, what's going on? I walk floors and say, tell me what your day's going. I get emails from people. So I feel that but if the GAO is making this comment, and I'll look into it,
Thank you.
Then there must be a challenge.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York, Ms. Clark, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank our ranking member. I want to thank the administrator and just say to you that I want to thank you for a number of things. One, for being engaged on the front lines of the small business marketplace and being a visible change agent for small businesses across our nation. I can attest to the fact that you have been out across this country. You were in the 9th Congressional District meeting with small businesses, and I think that that is refreshing in and of itself. You're dealing with an agency that has challenges. There's no doubt about that. But I think that you have demonstrated here today through your testimony the passion and drive that you have for the small business ecosystem across our nation. And you've displayed in today's hearing a response to the challenges of a 21st century SBA. I appreciate the innovative and creative approach that you've taken to doing more with less. One of the things that has not been really drilled down on and that really struck me in this conversation today is the fact that you have 2,000 employees for the United States of America and its territories. And when you think about the numbers of small businesses across this nation, you're doing a mammoth task. And certainly there's always room for improvement, but what I've been impressed with today is your commitment to meeting these challenges head on. And that's critical. And if indeed you're able to leave that legacy for whomever will be next in your shoes, that will take us a long way in making sure that the 21st century SBA is meeting all of the goals that we have for small businesses in our communities across this nation. The one thing that I'd like to do, because I think I've heard the answers that I need to hear today with respect to the recommendations of the GAO, and I feel assured that you're paying keen attention to those recommendations, is that I want to encourage you to look at how you can do more engagement with the small business ecosystems in the U.S. territories in the District of Columbia, strengthening them, quite frankly. And I use the example of Puerto Rico. Because of the challenge that they're facing economically, there's going to be a need for undergirding small business. And to the extent that we can be a part of helping them to stabilize just the marketplace on the ground for small business will go a long way as families struggle with the climate that has been created due to the challenges that Puerto Rico is facing overall with its economy. So having said that, if you'd like to respond, that's fine. If not, go to it. I'm convinced that you are focused like a laser on what needs to be done, and I want to encourage you to keep up that stride.
Thank you.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The gentlelady yields back. The
May I-
gentleman from Mississippi.
May I respond?
Oh, we're going to respond. I thought
Yeah.
you go right ahead.
I just wanted to, again, compliment you on the outreach that we did in your district, and I thought it was really superb, and so thank you for convening such a stellar group of people. But I think you raise an important point, and that is that we have a program called the Hub Zone Program, the Historically Underutilized Business Zone Program. And so I traveled to Puerto Rico to meet with the governor, to meet with the communities and local officials to understand the rate of debt that every Puerto Rican is assuming, looms large, and so it is a serious issue. I have some tools, and so I wanted to deploy those tools that we have, and so we went there with, again, our contracting relationships. We went in to say a couple of things. We said, we want to make sure that we're bringing corporations in to procure from the small businesses here. We want to make sure that the federal government is showing up here. So we put on a conference of about 30 major procurers to focus on Puerto Rico. But I didn't want to stop there, because for small businesses, even when they get a contract, what happens is that sometimes it takes government too long to pay. And so we have to look at, the minutiae on some of these things. And so in that instance, we launched 2 programs with the White House. And one is called Supplier Pay, which is where we say to large corporations, we'll pay you in 2 weeks if you pay small businesses in 2 weeks. And a quick pay program, which is we pay small businesses in 2 weeks if they're doing business with the federal government. So we're now driving that through as well. And it's giving, again, people the more capital and cash flow to be able to grow their business.
The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Kelly, is recognized 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Administrator, for being here and answering questions. I, too, am encouraged by the fact that it seems like you want to work and to fix all these things, and I'm very encouraged by that. That being said, I've found in whatever walk of life, whether it be in the military and commanding a battalion, whether it be a district attorney and prosecuting a murder case, or whether it be working for McRae's, which was a department store when I worked there, I've often found that priorities in a business plan are so important, regardless, and not just for the overall, but for each individual task that you want to do. And I've heard a lot of talk about what you've done, and I'm very impressed with that. I'm also very impressed and thankful and grateful for your response to Mississippi to the recent tornadoes, where I lost several victims' lives in my district and millions of dollars in property. So I hope that you'll keep checking on my folks and making sure that SBA does all they can in the disaster relief in Mississippi, which has been declared a federal emergency. So I guess my question is, have you prioritized the 62 of the 69 GAO objectives that they have for you? Have you prioritized those? And if so, have you decided, going back to a college, PERT, CPM, and those things, you can do some things simultaneous, some things you can't do until the other things are done. Is there a matrix or a chart? In the military, we call it a horse blanket of you got to accomplish these tasks. Do you have an overall strategic plan that says these are the tasks, this is when we're going to accomplish them? Further, this is the person who has the rose pinned on them to accomplish this, and a suspense or deadlines or a plan of action for each of those 62 that have not been accomplished. And furthermore, same thing, IT, you've got to get you've got to get the CIO hired, I think, in order to address the IT issues appropriately. And so I would encourage that you do the same thing with those 30 that are outstanding that the IG pointed out in the IT area. And if you can address what you've done to do those things.
Thank you. A lot was stated in that. Again, let me just say that, as I mentioned earlier, that I looked at them, prioritized them, rated them, if you will, and started with what I think is the priority, and that's what I'm doing. And you're right, some you can't achieve until the other is complete. But that's why I focused on the disaster. These investment funds are really important, the SBICs, and so that's why I went to the Library of Congress to help me study and to do that so that you would have confidence in the research and the metrics and the measures and the evaluation. It's why we put in an evaluation program for 6 different items here, and we'll continue to do that work. So yes, but let me just continue to share with you that process does matter, as you say. I mean, I came in, I left my small business that I created. I started 3 different businesses. I left my small business to do something here. And if it's not enduring, then what was the point? So I'm not just here to tell you about what we've done. That's why I'm here in a collegial fashion, because I understand the importance of institutional memory and documentation to make certain that the next person who I'll be handing this to in not so many months will be able to continue on this journey. So I thank you for your engagement and for your thoughtful consideration.
Let me tell you, I came here with a whole different attitude than I'm here now. I think you're a dynamic leader, and I think you've got some opportunities. And so I'm trying to give you some things, and if you don't put it in writing, I can tell you as a commander, if it's not written, it doesn't matter how good the organization is, we tend to lose that. The second thing, you've talked a lot about what you've done with SOPs. SOPs are so important. From my military background, we can't operate without SOPs. Yeah. But they've got to be current, and they've got to be active, and they've got to be applicable. And so I hear you saying that you're putting 41 new SOPs into practice, but my follow-up question would be to that, how many of the old SOPs and the duplicative SOPs have you taken out of action? Because when people are confused as to which SOP, so it's just as important to do away with the old as it is to enact the new. And so I'd like to hear if you've addressed that or if you intend to address the duplicative or otherwise.
Yeah, thank you. Again, one of the last businesses I started was a community bank. And I have to tell you that, I present some things to my board about, above the line metrics, and then I'm in the organization running the below the line metrics to make sure, and so I understand exactly what you're talking about, to make sure that, like if I've got to meet, a bogey of how many sales numbers I'm going to compete, then how many sales calls, how many salespeople, in all those below the line metrics that we have to manage a proper organization. I respect your training and understand it. I've tracked, ISO certification, lean startups, lean manufacturing, Myers-Briggs. I've been through so many trainings that, ad nauseum, excuse me, sir. But so I appreciate what you're saying, and I think it is important to prioritize, to sift, as I stated earlier, and to make sure that we're doing what matters soon, as the 80-20 rule. Thank you.
The gentleman's time has expired. Thank you. The gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Adams, who is the ranking member of the Investigations Oversight and Regulation Subcommittee, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our ranking member as well. And to you, Madam Administrator, I appreciate you being here and your testimony. Let me, I'm going to skip asking about the implementation of the recommendations because we've already talked about that. But are there budgetary impediments that Congress can address to assist the SBA in moving more expeditiously?
I very much appreciate the question because absolutely there are budgetary constraints. I am trying to be as resourceful as possible, for example, in training, as I alluded to earlier. To travel, to have somebody travel to come in even to headquarters is an expense. I have to put them up. I have to put up a per diem. So I'm trying to be as resourceful as I can, for example, to put on more webinars for training, you know, to use local tools. I'm putting people in clusters so that they're doing mentoring. So I'm trying to do what I can with what I have. But if you wanted to have a serious conversation about the budget, I start in California. I had 14 different departments: Highway Patrol, DMV, Caltrans, Department of Real Estate, Housing, and and it was a challenge to run them. But I had a unique opportunity that few people don't have, and that is to create a new department. The Department of Managed Healthcare, that's still operating now, is, I think, one of the better government-run programs in the state of California. But it was an entirely different thing to start with the slate, a clean slate, and say, this is the talent, this is the core competencies that I'm after, and so clearly, when you're refining an organization, it is a little more nuanced than it is to just start from fresh. I'd be delighted to engage in that conversation because that really requires a very thoughtful answer that you truly deserve.
Great, thank you very much. Let me just turn to the issue of program performance evaluations. GAO found that SBA has made limited progress in addressing the lack of program evaluations. Without evaluations, SBA lacks critical information for ensuring the validity and effectiveness of its goals, objectives, and strategies, as well as the validity and effectiveness of both new and existing programs. For example, SBA has for many years conducted an annual client survey to evaluate the effectiveness of its management and training programs. So are there any plans to survey SBA loan recipients to determine if the SBA's loan guarantee program are meeting client needs, and if not, why not?
I can just give you an example of some of the data points that we're receiving: business starts, revenue growth, job creation, retention, capital infusion, new markets, which ones are exporting, contracts acquired, innovation milestones, client demographics, the usefulness of the services, and most important, customer satisfaction. So these are metrics that we are tracking. As I mentioned earlier, that I'm interested in a unique identifier so that I can track the person longitudinally, because I think that's really a vital point. So again, so that's on the specifics of our resource partners and our public to understand what they're using. What we're also doing is trying to understand where the entrepreneurs are. So we have, I understand that we're in federal government space, and not every entrepreneur, to my disappointment, thinks of coming to SBA and the federal office for entrepreneurial support. So that's why I've deployed our team to go out and to find them, for example, in these innovation hubs, in these incubators, the growth accelerators that are spawning across the country. And we're learning there, too, what millennials need that might be different from our Encore entrepreneurs, that might be different from our women, veterans, because these are market segmentations. And with the advent of technological evolution, we're now able to do much more targeted digital marketing to people. I'd like to have that kind of capacity to answer your budget question and how to discern whether we are actually fulfilling the customer satisfaction that the taxpayers and, more importantly, the American entrepreneurs deserve to compete in an ever-evolving globalized economy.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your responses, and again, thank you for your service. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Nevada, Mr. Hardy, who's chairman of the Subcommittee on Investigations, Oversight, and Regulations, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Administrator, for being here. I, too, am excited and grateful for your energy and your passion, what you're trying to accomplish here. But I have concerns. I'm concerned about what I've read. I'm concerned about what I've heard and what I've seen. This agency is to aid, to counsel, to assist, to protect, small businesses that are vital to this economy. It's also, they're supposed to act in a manner that is efficient and nimble like our small businesses are. And so an agency for the fiscal year 2015 was intended to support about 50, or I think it's 30 billion in small business financing $80 billion in federal contracts. This is not only large numbers, but it's also concerning. Yet, the key findings are we have serious challenges out there with this administration, and this is troubling for Nevadans. It's troubling for America, and it's troubling for the economy. Although I too agree with what my colleague on the other side of the aisle just said, we've seen growth in the economy, and I do believe that the SBA is vital in that growth and has been assisted in that growth of our economy. And that shows how important this department is. But with these concerns that the GAO has, I have a couple of questions here for you. What is the simple impact on the SBA in utilizing the old, outdated SOPs? Is the first question I'd hit you with. Another question I'd like to go is ask you, you've been here 20 months. Why is the average? We've had, I think it's 10 administrators in less than 8 years, or 8 administrators in less than 10 years. What's going on?
You know, I saw, as I looked at the chart, I was really intrigued by the GAO's report and how far back it went. And, you know, two things is I did a little research, just personal research one evening, because it was just interesting to me personally. And so I saw that in some instances, the SBA administrator was promoted to a larger agency, sometimes into, you know, you have to have certain skills to be in entrepreneurship. And so different things are taking place. But we're a victim of the political process with every administration. You know, you have a new appointment, and generally people take a 4-year run and then leave, and you bring in, you know, the second bench. So I hope I'm not the second bench.
Yeah, but it appears to me that you've been one of the longest here. And I appreciate that fact. It means you must be having success, or you must have some passion about what you're doing. But do you have a succession plan for what's going on when you leave, or any of your administrators leave? Do you have a succession plan in order?
Yeah. So what you said is that SBA is an effective, valuable, and critical organization in our country. And I agree with you. When I traveled, I just met recently a young man named Kevin who said that because of a $150,000 loan that he got from SBA after everybody else denied him, he was able to build a little company that's now become Under Armour. You know, I was able to meet with the family in San Diego, you know, that with a little bit of help from SBIR, they were able to build an international global marketplace like Qualcomm.
I'd like to go right to the question, though. Do you have a
Yes.
succession plan in place?
Yes. So to that extent, I want this to be an enduring legacy. So I not just meet with our political appointments, I meet with our SECs and with the program offices on a weekly basis. We're meeting with them to inculcate and to imbue the entire organization down to the bowels of the organization, the sense of priority and value system that we have. And you write it, more importantly, for institutional purposes, you put it into job descriptions and performance rewards.
Okay. Back to that other question on the SBA utilizing what is the impact of small business on the SBA utilizing the outdated SOPs? You believe there's a major impact here?
I think since we have so many different vehicles of
I'd just like a yes or no on that. I got another question.
Yeah, okay, sir. Yes, we are reviewing the SOPs, as I mentioned. The ones that, as I mentioned, I'm addressing them in faster than any administrator in the last few years. We're making good progress, and I will continue to address that work.
Okay, also in your testimony, you stated that you require senior management to be directly responsible in ensuring and reviewing and the dissemination of the SOPs in their jurisdiction. Can you expand on what you've asked there? And also, could you tell me what their reporting areas? Do you have a report on their findings?
Right. They're required, sir, to certify every year their SOPs. Sometimes there are no changes, sometimes there are refinements, nuances, and sometimes they need a major overhaul. And so we have already overhauled, for example, the disaster one, as I mentioned. We've overhauled the SBIC one, as I mentioned. This is the kind of work that we've been pushing. And again, these are arduous processes, but we're doing them, we're undertaking them at unprecedented levels, and we commit to reporting to you and reporting back the momentum that we're building on.
And sorry, Mr. Chairman.
That's right.
Indulge me,
Yeah,
but have
gentleman's
they been
time's
reporting
expired,
to you?
but if you have something real quick.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if they had been reporting to you, your administrators.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
We have a very flat organization, and so I see the program offices individually and on a weekly basis in our program senior staff meetings.
Thank
But
you.
thank you for your service in construction. You're a rancher. You have a marvelous story, and so I was really pleased.
Studied well.
Thank you, sir.
The administrator's not the administrator for nothing. She's done her research, no question about that. And the chair would just note for the record, this is being broadcast by C-SPAN, so for the tens to dozens of people all across America that are watching this, an SOP, by the way, is standard operating procedure, because I'm sure they're all wondering what the heck that was. So I'll now turn to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Payne, who's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to our ranking member and Madam Administrator. It's once again good to see you. I had the opportunity to have you in my district for a small business roundtable, not necessarily with me, but with Senator Cory Booker, but it fell in my congressional district. So I won't.
We had two, actually.
I won't hold that against you that you were there with the senator, but
You got the podium for quite a while.
you know, first I just want to commend you for being able to move around the country as you've done during the course of your tenure. It doesn't go unnoticed that you really have spread yourself far and wide across the nation in order to support small business efforts throughout this country. There have been some issues around retention of senior leadership. And if I'm going over something that has already been addressed, please forgive me. There have been 41 changes in senior level positions at the SBA in the last decade. The GAO report, GAO reports that it gave multiple recommendations to increase human capital. Specifically, it noted the SBA still hasn't developed workforce plans, conducted skill assessments, updated SOPs, or established training goals. What are you doing to address these human capital issues in senior leadership and in the SBA regional district offices?
Yes, again, I think that that continuity is important to ensure that we have continuous program effectuation. And so I'm committed to that work, as I referenced earlier. To that end, we are reconstructing many of the job descriptions to make certain that they are forward-looking and responding to the evolving technology and communication standards, and just generally the way entrepreneurship is going. Earlier, the member mentioned the importance of being nimble. And so it is an art form as well as a science, I must say, to be able to be nimble at once and make sure that you're following SOPs and GIPRA and GIPRAMA and, all the General Performance and Results Modernization Act and Jobs Act 2010 and Jobs Act 2012 and Dodd-Frank and Sarbanes-Oxley and Gramm-Leach-Bliley. And this is my life, right, is to make sure that I am crossing every T and dotting every I as I try to be nimble and agile and responsive to the evolving emergence of entrepreneurship and the globalization of it. So it is a challenge, and you want to attract the best and the brightest. I think SBA is a very exciting place, and I must tell you, Congressman, that I was really disappointed because the characterization, these allegations are valid. I respect the GAO, but I must tell you that each and every day the SBA employees are working hard and they're dedicated, and I think people don't have an appreciation that when we have a district office, we're talking about half a dozen people who are managing states of challenges and managing business partners, and I said lending and local officials and state officials. These people have to be artful, and they have to be diligent and strong communicators, and they have to lift up branding opportunities through massive media communications efforts. So it is a very important skill set that we need, and the salary structures are somewhat restrictive. But it's government, and I respect the situation. I'm managing through it. I think that you know, again, we will continue to evolve these job descriptions to attract people, to show them that their work is meaningful. The studies that I've read say that people care about compensation, but more importantly, they care about the meaningfulness of their work. And I'm here to remind them of that every single day. There isn't anything that makes me happier than like the man that I just met on the airport in my last flight who said that he was an aspiring doctor and he couldn't figure out how to start his business, and he received a $50,000 loan from SBA, and he became a doctor who is now 72 years old and served our country by providing healthcare services to America.
So do you feel the compensation levels in your department may be curtailing your ability to maintain the best and the brightest?
Well, I have to tell you, I didn't intend to get into this, but the SBA structure, the salary structure, is not comparable to other cabinet offices. So I would, given an opportunity, be happy to address that and give you a comparison analysis. And so in many ways, it's a complex challenge. In many ways, I want mobility. You want mobility in an organization to continue to create opportunities for the younger folks coming in. On the other hand, you want constance, and you want knowledge, and you want a historical framework. And so, again, these are delicate challenges that I address every day. Every single day I'm trying to do this. And so I actually reached out to OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, and to PPO, the President's Personnel Office, to talk about how we make sure that SBA employees are given opportunities at Treasury, at Commerce, at the State Department, USTR, and they're now getting opportunities. That's the good news. The bad news is that now, while I have upward mobility, I've now got to find new talent to fill those slots.
Gentleman's
Okay,
time has
yes,
expired.
thank you.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Lukemeyer, who is Vice Chairman of this committee, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Madam Administrator. Just wanted to, I got in a little bit late, but I know that you commented that you'd be willing to come to Missouri, my home state, which has experienced a weather disaster recently, and we certainly welcome you to come. My only comment would be that rather than spend your time there, if you'd have your folks be willing to respond more quickly to our needs and our concerns, that would be really appreciated, because that's where we need the help. If you want to come and see it, more than welcome. You see a lot of water. With regards to that, what do you see happening? Where do you see the SBA going? What is your response at this point to the disasters that are happening as we sit here right now?
So first, let me just assure you that I deployed my team even before we've been designated as a disaster in the area. There's certain circumstances that have to be met, and I already have about 10 employees already assessing and going out and conducting that study. So as soon as we are given the orders and are able to go, we're now getting there in 24 hours. Okay. So it's a remarkable achievement. Overall, as I mentioned, I've traveled now to Washington to see how we responded there. I've traveled to Texas, to North Carolina to meet with Governor Nikki Haley. I'm trying to get out to understand what the refinements are that need to take place. And as a result, we have put in some what I think are important changes. We used to do this manually, where we would send out the information to victims of disasters. And so now when they come into our offices, we have the technology to do it, so we can track them better. Okay. We can give them information more efficiently. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we're getting to be able to deploy the folks to be able to do the work. That's great. Question for you, though, is the next question I have here is with regards to, in 2008, Small Business Disaster Response Loan Improvement Act was signed by Congress, and 8 years later, these IDAP bridge loans don't seem to be able to be had. Why are we not implementing this, especially in a time like this?
Yeah, I think that's the IDAP.
Is it a program worth having? I guess that's the first question.
Well, the financial institutions are having a problem adopting it, to be honest. Okay. They say that it's hard for them to process a $10,000 loan that, if not repaid by our permanent disaster program that we do, that we would provide them, then they have to amortize it for 10 years at a very low interest rate. So it's not a
practical program?
So the financial institutions are resisting it, and I'm asking them to put them on the record for formal comment as to what we need to do to make them work. But meanwhile, I didn't want
Well,
to
if
wait.
it doesn't work, it's got two choices: either fix it or get rid of it.
Well, that's the point.
Okay.
So that's what we're getting. We're working with them to get the answers. But meanwhile, sir, I think this is important, is that what we put in is a uncollateralized $25,000 loan that we can do directly through SBA, and we're processing them now in 7 days. So in the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish here,
Are you authorized to make direct loans?
Pardon me?
Are you authorized to make direct loans?
That is what the Office of Disaster Assistance does. We make direct loans for people who are physically or economically affected by a disaster.
Okay.
So for renters as well, it's important to note. This is the only office that makes direct loans, correct?
Okay, perfect. Well, that's news to me because the last time we had a director in here and she wanted didn't want the ability to make direct loans, which was interesting. Also, with regards to what's going on, all of this information that you're going to be accumulating, with regards to the hacks that have been happening with OPM and the IRS, how are you protecting your data?
There is first, let me just, to assure the American people, because as the chairman just mentioned, we have other people listening in. Let me just say that the SBA operates with financial institutions. They don't join our system until they're assured that their data is protected. And
Okay.
so I'm pleased
So
to
that begs the question, do you at the SBA have the same protocols and are under the same bank secrecy laws and data concerns and protections as the banks are?
Well, we have different. We operate under NIST, which is the National Institute of Science and Technology. So we operate under different guidelines, but similar protocols. And so in that regard, we are working toward what we call a Rev 4 level, which is the standard in government. And SBA is comfortable with the work that we're doing. And
But
so,
you're not there yet. That's what you just said.
well, it's
You said you're working toward it, so obviously you're not there yet.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I want to be honest with you. You know, I'm here to be honest with you. And
So should there be some concerns by our citizens in dealing with SBA about the protection of their information?
And the
what I
gentleman's
wanted-
time's expired, but go ahead and answer the
Yeah,
question.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that, Chairman. Again, the fact that the financial institutions who review our system and audit our system are comfortable connecting gives me some solace. But I have an auditor who comes in to tell us, and they've found no material weaknesses in our system. We haven't had a breach, but I have nonetheless made sure that we have processed. For example, we've moved our mainframe to a modern
Madam Administrator,
redundancy.
just as a follow, just as a closing thought here, I appreciate what you're saying, but whenever you say that, we're doing this all according to all these protocols, and you have GAO study that says that you're way behind on getting things done with regards to their assessments of not being able to do everything, when you have standard operating procedures that are being called into question, I'm not sure that the citizens can have great faith in what you're just saying. So it certainly concerns me, but I do appreciate your willingness to work on it, and I appreciate your comments. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, the gentleman's time has expired.
Right. Mr. Lukemeyer, I just wanted to say that I promised you lunch the last time if I didn't fulfill my goal, and I want you to know that I think now you owe me lunch because SBA 1 is now up and operating. We have several thousand banks that have joined us, and it's working. You got to come over and take a look at it. I think you'll really be pleased, sir.
Well, I think the cafeteria is still open, so if the folks want to. But
20 minutes before my next meeting.
yeah, in all seriousness, I want to thank the administrator for her participation today. I certainly appreciate your enthusiasm and your energy that you brought to this hearing. I especially appreciate your willingness to do everything within your power to implement the 62 out of 69 GAO recommendations, which still need to be resolved. And as I mentioned, my greatest concern is on the IT security issue, because we have seen the White House, for God's sake, as well as a whole bunch of other federal entities hacked, sometimes by China, we think. And these small businesses give you a lot of sensitive information, so let's protect that. And I appreciate your commitment to do that and report to us, on a regular basis. We said monthly, but, we're willing to be reasonable, but just keep us informed and let's get this done as quickly as possible.
Mr. Chairman, the good news is that SBA, while working ardently on these goals, is working in collaboration with our sister agencies, Homeland Security, with the FBI, and all of the other organizations available to all of the government services. So again, I want to put confidence into the system. We're working with serious financial institutions. I used to run the Department of Motor Vehicles at DMV, and I changed the driver's license. And as soon as you fix it, there's another system that comes in to hack it. This is something that's got to be an effort ongoing.
I totally agree with you, and there's nothing that brings more confidence to the American people than dealing with the Department of Motor Vehicles. So,
Ouch.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. Members will have 5 days to supplement their reports and add additional questions, et cetera. If there's no further business to come before the committee, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.